I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here we are. My name's Jason, and I've been with my wife, Emily, for about 5 years now. We met when we were both at the peak of our careers, me working as a climate researcher, she running a pretty successful marketing firm. Things seemed solid at first. We traveled, had adventures, and I honestly thought we had something real. But lately, I've started noticing little things that didn't add up, and it's been eating away at me. It started with small stuff, missed calls, late nights that she brushed off with some excuse about client meetings or working late. I figured maybe I was just paranoid or insecure. Emily's a bitchy, sharp-tongued woman, always quick with a lie if she thought it benefited her. Still, I trusted her, until I found out I shouldn't have. It was last Thursday that I decided to check her phone out of pure instinct. She'd been acting weird, secretive, edgy, and more than once, she deleted messages right in front of me. Call it paranoia, but I've learned that sometimes gut feelings aren't wrong. I grabbed her phone while she was in the shower, and what I saw froze me in place. There were messages, flirty, suggestive, between her and some guy named Ryan. The last message was at 11:42 p.m. that night, and it was clearly about meeting up, talking about ice stations and glacier melt rates, like some kind of code. I knew that because Ryan was a researcher in a similar field, doing remote work at ice stations for climate change studies. It's what I do for a living too, so I instantly recognized the terminology. My stomach sank. How long had this been going on? Why Ryan? Why me? I felt this hot wave of betrayal, and my mind just spun with rage and confusion. She always said she appreciated my work, that she was proud of me, and now I find out she's been screwing around with some guy who shares my passion but clearly doesn't give a damn about her. It's like the universe sat back and said, "Here's a perfect way to punch him in the gut." I couldn't believe it. I looked through more messages. She was very careful, but not careful enough. They'd been talking for months, probably sneaking around during my long trips away on expeditions. The worst part, she kept lying about her whereabouts, saying she was working late or out with friends, when she was really in some remote ice station with Ryan, swapping shit about ice melt rates, probably having sex in some cold-ass cabin. I felt sick just thinking about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining her with him, that bitchy smirk on her face when she lied to me last week. I kept replaying all the little hints I missed, her phone pin, the way she'd suddenly become overly defensive about her texts, her dismissive attitude when I brought up her night out last month. It all clicked. She'd been cheating on me right under my nose. I knew I had to confront her. I didn't want to do it in some angry, yelling way. I wanted her to admit it, face the truth. But I also knew that this wasn't just about her lie. It was about the fact that she's a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with it. That's when I started planning what to do next. I needed to find out everything, and I needed to make her regret it. The next day I kept my cool. I waited until she left for her meeting, and I went through her stuff, her emails, her social media. I found even more evidence, screenshots of their messages, even some explicit photos she'd sent him last month. The worst part, she was so cocky about it, acting like she was untouchable, like I'd never find out. I felt like my whole world was collapsing. My wife, the woman I trusted, was out there screwing some guy she'd met at a glacier research station, lying to my face. How could she be so bitchy and manipulative? How could she lie so effortlessly? I was furious, more furious than I've ever been in my life. But I knew I couldn't just lash out. I had to be smart. I had to find a way to make her pay, to show her she crossed a line she couldn't come back from. That's where I am now, trying to figure out what to do next. Do I confront her outright? Do I tell her I know? Do I just leave? Everything happening so fast, and I'm caught in this whirlwind of shock, anger, and hurt. It's like my entire world has turned upside down overnight. I never thought she'd be capable of betrayal like this, especially with someone whose work I respect so much. It's all just so raw. The confrontation was inevitable, and honestly, I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. After spending the night stewing in my own rage and heartbreak, I decided I'd call her out face to face. I needed her to see me, to feel what she'd done without a hiding behind screens or lies. The moment I saw her walk in the door that evening, I could see her acting different, nervous, maybe even guilty, but she was trying to hide it behind that bitchy smirk of hers. I didn't waste time. I showed her the messages from Ryan, screenshots I had saved, all of it. Her face turned pale almost instantly. She stuttered, tried to deny it, calling it a misunderstanding, or saying Ryan was just a colleague she was working with, that it meant nothing. Yeah, right. She threw out every excuse she could think of, saying she was lonely, that Ryan was just a project, that she was bored, or that I was never around enough. She looked me dead in the eyes and lied with that same bitchy tone, like she was convinced she could talk her way out of it, but I wasn't buying it. I was furious, my heart pounding like a drum. The betrayal cut so deep I almost couldn't breathe. I told her I knew about the affair, about the ice stations, about her sneaking around behind my back. Her reaction, that was the real kicker. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of not trusting her, saying I was overreacting. She had the nerve to call me jealous and possessive. After all the shit I'd uncovered, she said, "You think I'm some kind of whore just because I had a little fun. You're overreacting, Jason." That was the moment I realized her true character. She's a manipulative, narcissistic bitch who thinks she's untouchable. She kept trying to turn it around, blame me for not giving her enough attention, saying I was busy with work and that she needed some excitement. She kept denying, lying, trying to make me feel guilty for catching her. Honestly, I was too mad to even process what she was saying. Every word she spat just made me angrier and more determined to make her pay. I remember looking at her and feeling this deep, raw sadness mixed with rage. I'd always thought she was smart, strong, maybe even a little bitchy, but I never thought she'd be capable of this kind of deception. It felt like I'd been living with a stranger all along. That night, after she stormed off in tears, I sat alone in the dark, contemplating what to do. I knew I had to get out of this, but I didn't want her to win, didn't want her to think she could just lie her way out of it. I spent the following days gathering more evidence. I didn't want her to manipulate her way out of this. I checked her emails, her phone logs, even her social media. I found more messages, flirtatious, suggestive, even some explicit stuff, clearly planned rendezvous. She'd gone so far as to meet him in secret. During trips I thought she was working. Every new piece of evidence made me angrier. But beneath the rage there was also this cold realization. I was being played for a fool. I was devastated, yes. But what hurt even more was the feeling that I'd been so naive. How could I trust her after everything I discovered? The woman I thought I knew, the woman who used to smile at me and call me her rock, was out there screwing some other guy and lying straight to my face. I kept replaying all those moments when she'd lied, all the times I brushed off her odd behaviors. It was like I'd been blind all along. In the midst of all this chaos, I started thinking about my options. Was I going to confront her again? Or just pack my bags and leave? I was leaning toward the latter, honestly. But part of me also wanted her to see that I knew, to see that I was no fool. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, how much she'd hurt me. That's when I started planning my next move, because I knew this wasn't just about catching her. This was about making her realize she couldn't lie her way out of what she'd done. So here I am, caught in this whirlwind of betrayal, trying to find a way to make sense of it all. I never imagined I'd be in this position, being betrayed by someone I loved and trusted so deeply. All I can say is, if you're in a similar boat, don't be stupid like I was. Watch the signs, trust your instincts, and don't let anyone manipulate or lie to you like this. Because once it's out in the open, there's no going back. After the initial shock of realizing she was cheating on me wore off, the real mess began. I knew I couldn't just walk away without making her feel the weight of what she'd done. That's when I started crafting my plan, something calculated, something that would hit her where it hurts but without exposing myself to her manipulative bullshit. I wanted her to feel trapped, vulnerable, and maybe, just maybe, realize that her actions had consequences. I spent the next couple of days gathering everything I could. I set up hidden cameras in the house, nothing invasive, just enough to catch her if she slipped up again. I knew she'd try to lie her way out of it, so I wanted to be ready. I also contacted a few people I trusted, one of my colleagues who owed me a favor, and a private investigator I'd used before. I didn't want her to think she was getting away with this. I needed her to understand that I was serious, that I had proof, and that I was willing to play hardball. Meanwhile, she kept trying to spin her web of lies. She'd come home, act innocent, and then turn on the charm, trying to persuade me that everything was fine, that I was just overreacting, or accuse me of controlling her. She'd call me paranoid, bitchy, insecure, whatever she thought would make me doubt myself. Honestly, I was close to losing my mind. How could she be so callous, so manipulative? Every time she looked at me with those cold, bitchy eyes, I saw someone I didn't recognize anymore. One night, I decided to confront her again, this time with everything I had. I made sure my cameras caught her every move. When she came home late, smelling like she'd been somewhere she shouldn't be, I was ready. I waited until she was in the bedroom, then played back the footage I had collected. She froze when she saw the cameras. Her face turned pale and she started sputtering excuses. I told her I knew she'd been lying all along, that I'd seen the texts, the photos, everything. I told her I was done trusting her, that she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. Her reaction, that bitchy smirk again, like she was trying to be brave. She told me I was overreacting, that I was crazy, that she'd just been stressed with work and needed some escape. She tried to make it sound like some kind of innocent mistake, even hinting that Ryan was just a friend. Yeah, right. I saw through it. I knew she was lying, and I knew that she'd been screwing him during my trips. She was so brazen about it, so dismissive of my feelings. It was like she actually believed she could talk her way out of this mess. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, her lies, her sneers, the way she'd looked at me with that bitchy attitude. I felt this deep, gnawing pain in my chest, like my heart was breaking all over again. I'd loved her, trusted her, and now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she was above consequences. The betrayal hit me hard. It wasn't just about her cheating. It was about the fact that she thought she could get away with it, that she could keep lying and I'd never find out. In my mind, I started to formulate what I'd do next. I knew I wouldn't stay passive. I wanted her to feel the loss, the regret. I wanted her to know that her actions had destroyed what we had built. I wasn't sure if I'd leave her right away, but I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal anymore. She'd pushed me to the edge, and I had to show her I wasn't going to be just another fool who took her lies. Now, I'm sitting here, trying to decide whether to confront her again with everything I've uncovered or to just cut my losses and walk away. Every part of me screams that she's not worth fighting for, not anymore. But a small, stubborn voice inside keeps telling me to make her regret this, make her understand that she lost me for good. The emotional roller coaster is relentless. One minute I feel rage and betrayal. The next, I feel sadness and disappointment. It's like I'm losing my mind, but I know one thing for sure, this isn't over. Not yet. The decision to stay quiet for a little while and just observe her movements felt like the smartest move. I needed to see how far she'd go, how much she'd lie, and whether she'd try to cover her tracks again. I wasn't naive enough to think I'd catch her every time, but I had enough proof now to make her nervous. That smirk, that bitchy attitude she always carried, suddenly seemed more like a mask, one she wore to cover her guilt. Every day I watched her carefully. She'd come home with a little less confidence, a little more defensive, still trying to act like the queen of the world, but I could see cracks forming in her facade. She'd get snippy if I asked her about her plans or her whereabouts. She'd dismiss my concerns, call me paranoid, jealous, or crazy. I didn't care anymore. I knew she was lying, and I knew she was hiding something bigger. I could see it in her eyes, the way she'd avoid my gaze, the way her voice would shake just a little when I pressed her. One afternoon, I caught her trying to delete some messages on her phone quickly, nervously. I saw her fumbling with her screen, trying to erase something. That was my cue. I waited until she was out of the house for a few hours, then I grabbed her phone again. I went through her messages, and sure enough, I found more evidence. She'd been messaging Ryan about meeting up in some remote cabin near the ice stations, talking about getting away from everything, and how much she needed that escape. The explicit photos I'd seen earlier weren't just a one-time thing. They'd been ongoing, and she'd been planning secret rendezvous. That night, I decided to lay everything out on the table once more, but this time I was more confrontational. When she got home, I didn't hold back. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the secret trips, the lies, her reaction. That familiar smirk like she was trying to be brave. She started calling me crazy, saying I was paranoid, that Ryan was just a friend she'd met at the ice station while I was away. She tried to spin it again, but I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her she'd crossed a line, that I was done tolerating her manipulations. I told her I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. I'd seen enough. I was hurt, yes, but what enraged me more was her arrogance, thinking she could just keep lying and I'd never find out. I told her I was going to end it, that I'd had enough of the lies, the betrayal, the bitchy attitude, and the manipulative games. Her response was typical. She got defensive, started crying. Those fake tears that you know are just for show, and then threw a tantrum. She yelled at me, called me insecure, a jealous psycho, and told me I was ruining everything because I didn't trust her. But I just sat there, staring at her, feeling emptier than ever. I knew the truth now, and there was no way I could or would pretend it didn't exist anymore. That night I went to bed knowing I had to make a choice: stay and fight for what's left of our marriage, or walk away and leave her to her lies. I was angry, hurt, and exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. But deep down I felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been a fool for so long, believing her lies, trusting her smile. But now I saw her for what she was: a manipulative, selfish bitch who thought she could get away with anything. I spent most of the night trying to calm myself down, weighing the pros and cons of everything. Part of me wanted to grab my stuff and leave, but another part, stupid as it sounds, still hoped she'd come clean and own up to it. I don't know if I was just holding on to some hope that she'd change, or if I was just afraid of being alone. Either way, I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. Whatever I decided, I had to do it soon. Because this chaos, this betrayal, it was tearing me apart from the inside out. The following days were a blur. I kept my distance, not just to let her squirm, but because I needed time to sort through everything. The more I watched her, the more I realized how much she thrived on manipulation. She'd still throw her bitchy comments, acting like I was overreacting, saying I was wasting my energy, but I could see the cracks in her veneer widening. She was starting to get nervous, which was exactly what I wanted. I decided I'd push her a little more, just enough to see how far she'd go. One afternoon, I left my laptop open on the dining table where she could see it. I casually left some of the evidence I'd gathered: screenshots of their messages, explicit photos, and even a note I'd written to myself: check her phone again tonight. I didn't think she'd suspect I was so prepared, but I wanted her to know I wasn't playing around anymore. That evening she came home late, smelling like liquor and cold air, and I could tell she was trying to act normal. She was nervous, jittery even, as she sat down across from me. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I had more proof, more than she thought I knew. Her face flickered with panic. She started denying everything again. That bitchy smirk was gone, replaced with a nervous twitch. She kept insisting she didn't know what I was talking about, that I was crazy, and that she was trying to make it work. I told her I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I told her I knew she'd been sneaking around, lying, and that I had enough evidence to make her regret it. I said I'd been patient, but now I was done. I told her I was going to leave her, and I wanted her to understand that she'd lost everything: my trust, my respect, the marriage we once had. She looked at me, eyes wide, and for a moment I thought she might break down, but instead she just sneered and said, "You're overreacting. You're just jealous because Ryan's a real man who actually does something interesting with his life." That comment made me furious. I'd never felt so angry in my life. That bitchy attitude, that sense of entitlement. She thought she was untouchable. I realized then that she wasn't going to change, and maybe I'd been fooling myself thinking she would. I had to get out of this fast. I told her she could pack her shit, that I was done wasting my time on her lies, and that I'd be leaving soon. She just sat there, speechless, like she was waiting for me to change my mind. But I knew better. After she stormed off to the bedroom, I started packing my own things. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of watching me leave, but I also wanted her to see that I wasn't backing down anymore. As I packed, I kept thinking about everything: the betrayal, the lies, the way she'd thought she could get away with this. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Relief because I was finally taking control, and emptiness because I knew I was walking away from someone I'd loved, someone I'd thought was my partner. Before leaving, I left her a note. Simple but effective. "You lost me. Don't try to contact me. I hope you enjoy your little secret, but I want nothing to do with it. This is goodbye." I didn't want to drag things out anymore. I was done being her fool. I was done explaining myself. I just wanted to get away, rebuild, and figure out what life looked like without the woman who betrayed me so deeply. Walking out of the house for the last time felt like the most painful thing I'd ever done. My chest was heavy, my mind racing, but at the same time I felt a strange sense of liberation. I finally saw her for who she truly was, and now I was free to move on. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, leaving behind everything I thought I knew, everything I loved. But I also knew I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies and betrayal. Looking back, I realized that the biggest lesson I learned was trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to fix. She was a manipulative bitch who thought she could keep her secrets forever. But I also learned that sometimes you have to cut your losses, no matter how much it hurts. Because if you don't, you'll just keep drowning in the lies and eventually you lose yourself. I don't regret leaving because I know I deserve better. I deserve someone who respects me, who's honest, and who won't lie and cheat behind my back. Moving forward, I plan to rebuild, without her. And to anyone out there in the same situation, trust your instincts and don't let yourself be played. If you find the truth, face it, no matter how ugly it is, because, honestly, that's the only way to truly move on. It's been a few weeks since I left her, and honestly, I'm still trying to piece everything together. Some nights I lie awake thinking about the betrayal, the way she lied, manipulated, and thought she was untouchable. But I also feel a strange sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, I can breathe without constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for her next move, or feeling guilty for things I didn't even do. I realized I'd been holding on to a version of her that no longer existed, and now I'm finally free from the cycle of lies. The hardest part has been dealing with the aftermath of it all, cutting ties with her and trying to rebuild my sense of trust in myself. It's not easy, but I know I'll get there. I've started focusing on my work again, spending more time outdoors, reconnecting with friends I'd let slip away. The pain is still there, but it's less sharp now. It's just part of the process, learning how to trust again, learning to forgive myself for trusting her so blindly. One thing I've realized through all of this is how much I underestimated how manipulative and selfish people can be, especially those who think they're above consequences. Emily wasn't some innocent victim caught in a bad situation. She was actively lying, cheating, and hiding her affair because she thought she could get away with it. That bitchy attitude she always carried. It was just a mask. Beneath that, she was a woman who thought she could manipulate her way out of anything. Well, she learned quick that she couldn't. Looking back, I also see how much I let her control my life, my trust, and my happiness. I was so afraid of losing her that I ignored the signs, convinced myself she was just stressed or bored. But that's just part of the manipulation, making you doubt yourself, making you think it's your fault. I won't let that happen again. I've learned that sometimes walking away is the only way to preserve what's left of your dignity and sanity. I don't think I'll ever forget the pain, but I also won't let it define me. Instead, I'll use it as a lesson. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep, but life goes on. I'm rebuilding myself piece by piece, and I refuse to let her actions break me completely. I've realized I deserve more honesty, more respect, more love from someone who truly cares. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, I want you to know, you're not alone. It hurts like hell at first, and it's okay to feel broken. But eventually, you'll find your strength again. It might take time, but your self-worth isn't determined by someone else's lies. Trust your instincts, listen to your gut, and never settle for less than the truth. Because in the end, that's what truly matters, being honest with yourself and knowing your value. I'm still healing, and I probably always will be a little, but I'm finally moving forward. I've learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away and proving to yourself that you're better off without the lies. Emily may have thought she was clever, but she underestimated my resilience. I'm stronger now, and I'm finally ready to build a future that doesn't include her manipulative shadow. That's all I've got. Thanks for listening.